The Qur'an very clearly follows the Bible in relating the occasion of Adam's disobedience, in approaching the forbidden tree as in Al-Baqarah 2.35, and declares that as a result of his action he was driven out from the Garden of Eden. Significantly, the command in this verse is in the plural, and both Pichol and Yusuf Ali in footnotes take this to mean that the whole of mankind was dismissed with Adam and Eve. Thus, because Adam is considered to be a prophet, many Muhammadan writers even go so far as to boldly claim that he committed no sin at all, and merely slipped through a forgetfulness of Allah's command. Ali, in his The Religion of Islam, page 201, tries to explain that there was no intention on the part of Adam to disobey the divine commandment. It was simply forgetfulness that brought about his disobedience. On the other hand, the Qur'an teaches quite plainly that it was not a mere forgetfulness that led to Adam's disobedience, but that he fell to the temptings of Satan, even though Allah had already and unambiguously warned him that Satan was an adversary who would seek to get him out of the garden. Taha 20.117. Satan allegedly said to him, "O Adam, shall I lead thee to the tree of eternity and to a kingdom that never decays?" Taha 20.120. Even though this was the very tree forbidden to him, Adam chose to believe Satan and disobey Allah. If this is not a sin, what is? In another passage, we find further evidence that Adam's transgression can hardly be excused as an act of forgetfulness. We read that Satan said to Adam and Eve, "Your Lord only forbade you this tree, lest you should become angels or such beings as live forever." Al-A'raf 7.20. Not only did Allah warn them against eating of the tree, but we discover that Satan even reminded them of Allah's warning while tempting them to sin. How can any intellectually honest person possibly sustain the argument that Adam merely forgot his Lord's command? Satan's reminder aside, it is surely too hard to believe that Adam could have been so utterly stupid as to forget the one and only thing prohibited to him, especially since the order came directly from Allah himself. Furthermore, if this were only a minor mistake, why was his and his wife's penalty so severe? The permanent banishment of the couple and the whole of a human race with them from the Garden of Eden? Again, if Adam did not really commit a sin and was a sinless prophet, who then introduced sin into the world, and what are its consequences? It is therefore refreshing to find that not all Muhammadan writers endeavor to whitewash Adam's transgression and sweep it under the carpet of their presuppositions. Al-Razi says of Adam and his wife in his Introducing the Prophets, page 5, when they were asked about their present shameless condition, they confessed that they were beguiled and outwitted, turned rebellious for a moment, forgot Allah's kind grace and commandment, and broke the covenant. In other words, they had sinned. There was no sin in the state of nature. Sin came from the knowledge of it, from the fateful fruit of the tree of knowledge. When Adam hid behind the tree and hesitated to come before Allah in the nude, sin had been born. Al-Razi's comments are perfection and a lovely breath of fresh air instead of the putrid smell of the others who are lying. The Qur'an also teaches that Noah and Jonah were transgressors and that they too prayed for the forgiveness of all their sins. Hud 11.47, Al-Anbiya 21.87. In the Sunan works of Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, and the Darimi, it is recorded that Muhammad once said, "Every son of Adam is a sinner, and the best of sinners are those who repent constantly." Quoted in Karim's Mishqatul Masabih, volume 3, page 360. This statement clearly shows that Muhammad himself did not believe in the sinlessness of the prophets. Not only does the Qur'an teach that many of the former prophets prayed for the forgiveness of their sins, but it expressly states that Muhammad himself needed forgiveness for his transgressions. Surah Muhammad 47.19. Know therefore that there is no good but Allah, and ask forgiveness for thy fault, wastaghfir li dhanbika, and for the men and women who believe. Al-Fath 48.1. Verily, we have granted thee a magnificent victory, that Allah may forgive thee, لِيَغْفِرَ لَكَ, thy faults, ذَنْبِكَ, of the past and those to follow. Once again, Muhammadan commentators find it hard to reconcile such teachings with the doctrine of Isma of the prophets. Therefore, their attempts to explain away these verses are hardly successful. The words in Muhammad 47:19, which Yusuf Ali translates as, and ask forgiveness for thy fault, وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لِذَنْبِكَ, are exactly the same words used in Surah Yusuf 12.29 about Zulaykha, the Muhammadan name for Potiphar's wife, as is commanded by her husband to repent for her desire to seduce Joseph. In her case, Yusuf Ali translates the expression to ask forgiveness for thy sin and not thy fault. There can be absolutely no doubt that this is the obvious meaning of the text, but Ali substitutes fault for sin in 47:19 purely because it is Muhammad's own misdemeanors that are spoken of in this verse. The object is to water down the meaning of the word dhanb in this case to natural human weaknesses not considered to be actual sins or transgressions. What was a sin in Zulaykha's case conveniently becomes a fault in Muhammad's, even though the same word is used in both cases. Yet, this is another example of another inconsistent Quranic exegesis caused by the Isma doctrine. Muhammad Ali says that the word dhanb, as used in Surah 48.2, that there is no imputation of sin, but only of human shortcomings. This is a further example of the methodology that deliberately dilutes the meaning of words so as to sustain the doctrine of Muhammad's sinlessness. Not only have Muhammadan writers had to resort to unfortunate subterfuge of exegesis to explain away the word for sin in the verses quoted, but they have also had to do the same with the word istaghfar, which throughout the Qur'an means simply to ask forgiveness. Once again, Muhammad Ali concedes that the word is generally taken as meaning asking for forgiveness of sin, but in Muhammad's case, he claims that it means to ask protection from sin. No objective interpretation of the use of the word istaghfar in the Qur'an in its various forms can yield the meaning protection. This meaning has been casually and very cavalierly read into the word by those who cannot accept that the Qur'an commands Muhammad to ask for the forgiveness of his sins. The Hadith, however, openly support the teachings of the Qur'an that Muhammad needed to ask for the forgiveness of his sins and record the prayer of Muhammad, part of which reads, Sahih al-Bukhari Hadith 9.482, narrated by Ibn Abbas, O Allah, forgive me my sins that I did in the past or will do in the future, and also the sins I did in secret or in public, and that which you know better than I. You are my only God whom I worship, and there is no other God for me to worship, none but you. It is fair to conclude that the earliest sources of Islam had the honesty not to teach that the prophets were sinless, but, on the contrary, assert that many of them, including Muhammad, were sinful. So-called believers and unbelievers, as we have repeatedly and unerringly shown in chapter after chapter, it is by divine justice that Muhammadan Islam is totally annihilated by the very ahadith that explain the Qur'an and Muhammad's Sunnah to his followers.